Today, I think it goes to say all of us at some point have been affected by, we have seen, we have heard the stuff that's going on around the world. Some of us have taken part in the protests. We have been a part of the conversation in one way or another. And today, we're hosting this one-off show. It's on PHBC Radio, as well as across our streaming platforms, because in the light of the conversations that are taking place around the world regarding the inequalities suffered, particularly by Black people, across the world and across the generations, one of the things I felt was that it's appropriate for us to gather and to, I suppose, wrestle with the issues. Let's have this conversation. Let's do this. Let's talk about it. So to lay a little bit of a foundation to our approach today. Sorry. I just want to do this. Okay, good. To lay a little bit of a foundation to our approach today, I want to use this, an illustration that's borrowed by a chap called Robert Morris. Robert Morris, he was preaching in his church and he held up a bottle. And so I'm going to hold up a bottle to you now. Can you see, tell me what you see written on the bottle. If you see can you see it? Can you see the logo? Can you see the brand?
It's not clear.
I can't see.
No.
You need to pull it away from the camera a little bit.
I take it's a cough mixture, is it?
It looks like Benylin.
Oh, dry
something.
Dry cough.
Benylin.
That's what you can see. Benylin dry cough, yes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interestingly, when I look at the bottle, I cannot see Benylin dry cough. I'm seeing a barcode. I'm seeing a date, an expiry date. I'm seeing little bits of writing. In order for me to be able to see what you see, it's critical for me to be able to walk around, to come around to the other side. And so tonight, or this evening, is about coming around to the other side. It's about us looking at things from a different perspective. If you're joining us on screen, if you're joining us on radio, I do want to say, of course, welcome. Welcome to the show. The panelists that we have today's panel is comprised of 4 people, and these are people who don't proclaim themselves to be experts in the area of race or social justice. These are people who are affected by the issue, and they've agreed to join the fray, so to speak, just as the world wrestles with the atrocities that have been committed in the past, the anguish that's being expressed right now, and the aspirations that we hold for our future. And those of you joining us by video, you'll see on the panel that we have 4 people. We've got someone of Black Caribbean heritage, and they'll introduce themselves in a minute, in a moment. Black Caribbean heritage. We've got somebody of Black African heritage, and at the same time we've got someone of mixed African and white English heritage, and somebody that is just, or singularly should I say, of white English heritage. And this racial mix actually was not intentional, but I'm glad that we have a spectrum of perspectives upon which we can draw on today. So let me start by welcoming each of you. Evadne Campbell, Shola Stavely, Yao Biddiako, Dr. Yao Biddiako, and Andy White, or if you, as you can see on your screen, Andy's iPhone.
You can see Andy.
Yes. So let me say, first of all, let's start with you, giving you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell the viewers and listeners what you bring to the table, why you agreed to be a panelist on Race for the World. We'll start with you, Evadne.
Okay, thank you. I'm Evadne Campbell, and as Pastor Deji says, I'm no expert in this field, but I am passionate about this field. So I have been involved in community activism for all my adult life. And I think, as with many, many people, the issue has really come to the fore as a result of the death of George Floyd, and also then the subsequent Black Lives Matter movement that has really, really taken form. And I'm got a call coming through my WhatsApp, through my Facebook. So, but that's me in a nutshell. I can't get rid of these people now.
Well, thank you. Obviously, as we dialogue tonight, there'll be plenty of opportunity for us to find out a little bit more about you. Ladies, going on with the ladies first theme. Shola, please tell us a little bit about yourself, what you bring to the table. Why are you here?
Okay, so my name is Shola Stavely. First and foremost, I'm a Christian. I love the Lord. I love God's people and His creation in general. I think that's what's always pushed me to always trying to strive for equality everywhere I go. I've worked in various offices and different environments with lots of different people and their different mentalities, and you have to try to educate people on different things. And although people call me an activist sometimes, but I don't think of myself as an activist. I think myself as just a simple person who just wishes everyone would just treat each other with just basic love and human kindness. And once we just go from that perspective, I think we shall be fine. But basically the death of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Brooks and all that recently has happened. And we've had the Black Lives Movement and Black Lives Matter movement, and that sort of brought everything to the forefront, which is why I was very happy to join this discussion, because it then helps to focus the discussion in the right way, because right now there are lots of voices and there's a lot of loud people speaking, but not actually speaking anything. They're not saying anything that's actually quite tangible. And I think it's quite important that we actually say the right things to build bridges, to build a community, and to actually go forward with equality rather than just throwing stones at each other and just hoping someone backs down eventually. So that's kind of where I am at the moment.
Thank you. Gentlemen, Yao, please introduce yourself to the viewers and listeners.
Okay, so my name is Yao Biddiako. I am a scientist. Sort of in my day job, I teach at university, and I also do medical research. I am of mixed heritage. So my father, my late father, was Ghanaian, and my mother is English, white English. I was born in Scotland, and I've lived in a number of places. I grew up in Ghana, but obviously with British family. So visited the UK several times as a boy. Lived in America for 12 years for my sort of early adulthood, throughout my university and then postgraduate training was in America. And so was in America when Barack Obama, for instance, was elected as president. I was in Chicago, actually. So was in Grant Park for his sort of victory speech. So that was a very different crowd from the crowds that we see in America and in Europe at the moment. But as a biracial man, college student in America is actually probably the first place I really had to think about my race. Growing up in Ghana, didn't think about it as much, although looking back, there were challenges. And so I've been interested in issues of race and identity personally. And obviously the matters of the last several weeks have brought these things to the fore. And I think in a way, it's a time for people to really start talking about things that maybe when people were afraid or unwilling to deal with. And I think it potentially could be a very healing time, despite the hurt and the anger that is on display. So I was happy to take part in this webinar to share my views, but also to listen to other perspectives and learn from other people.
Fantastic, thank you. Last but not the least, Andy, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, well, my name is Andy White, which kind of gives away kind of the corner that I guess I'm coming from. I'm 58 years of age. I've lived in either London or the southeast, Surrey, Kent, for all my life. I've been a Christian since I was 15 years of age, and recently moved to southwest London, and fairly recently joined Colossal Baptist Church, and I'm here to actually kind of listen to the debate. It's actually very distressing, the kind of images and the fact that this has been an issue all my life, and we haven't anything like cracked it yet. And so it's just be very interesting to be part of the debate, really, to say, well, how do we move to a situation where we're judged, as Martin Luther King once said, on the content of our character, rather than the colour of our skin. So very interested in this debate tonight.
Thank you again to all of you. Welcome. If you're listening on radio, on PHBC radio, or if you're watching through one of the video channels, please know you can also join the conversation. You can comment, you can ask a question. We'll see those and we'll pick those up, and we'll try as best as possible to feed that into the conversation this evening. If you're on the radio through the usual channels, click the link. If you're on the radio app, click the link, send in a question or a comment or a contribution that way. So we're here to talk about race and racism and racial justice issues. As we do this, we're going to draw obviously from perspectives here in the UK, from America, particularly precipitated by George Floyd's death last month. And obviously Dr. Biddiako Yao is in Ghana at the moment, so he'll also draw from his experiences, Evadne drawing from the Caribbean experience. And we just want to use the rest of our time here to try and address this. Let me just be clear when we finish, because you start these conversations, they can go on perpetually. As most of you know, I've had some really wonderful news today, and I need to go off and face that. So we expect to finish at 8:30. So, by about 8:30, we should have taken this discussion some way forward, and hopefully brought it to a point where we can wrap it up and pause it for now. If you're listening online, please feel free to join in. So, racism is defined as prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism directed against a person or people based on their racial background, ethnic background, and typically where those races and ethnicities are minority group. So racism particularly is the definition of racism is focused on that prejudice against people from a minority group. Typically, I emphasize. Or in some ways, there's another dimension to racism, which is the belief system, the paradigm that a particular race, a particular group, a racial group possess inherent superiority to another racial group or inferiority to another racial group. As has been said and alluded, George Floyd's death, I see, and many agree, I'm sure you, the panelists here, and those of you watching and listening will agree, that George Floyd's death can be a huge catalyst for a change with regard to awareness of this issue and progress. My question to the panel, my opening question to the panel is, where does the change need to start? So at which point, because we know that the old saying, the one constant is change. But unless that change is directed at a source, unless what's the start point? Where do we take that first step, or where do we need to start to look? What are the things we need to start to think about when we're talking about a change in this situation? And I will start with Shola.
So I believe a change should come from self. I think from each person, it has to be self. A change comes from yourself, first of all. I believe that we as human beings have to actually evaluate ourselves and actually find out not find out, we know we all have biases and within us and things like that, and just look at that and then work on that particular part, because you find out that sometimes the way we behave towards people is actually inherent in us. Like literally, it's been taught to us from years back, and we just sort of carried it on and on and on without necessarily thinking, is that right? I think education is very, very important. Educating people the right way and not having a one-sided education of the one thing or the other. I remember when I was in school, when we had Black History Month, for instance, we were taught only probably about 3 major people in Black history, and that was it. There's a lot more to Black history than just those 3. And I think it's quite important we're educated. I think the change is to come from education. We need to educate ourselves. And also, another part I always say as well, we have the rights. Like things like voting, for instance, to me is very, very important. Voting the right people into power, people rising up and actually standing for office, then voting them into power, because if you don't have the people in the room to make that change for us, so we'll just end up going around in circles and having things happening to us. Yes.
Okay, you talk about change, and you said, and I hear that, thank you, you said, change starts from us, and I hear that. One of the core elements, one of the core illustrations, which I think is, or analogies, absolutely fantastic, to help us understand the disparity between the power and the wealth that white people hold against that of black people, is the monopoly effect. I'm sure you've all heard of it. Basically, for those who are listening and don't know it, this is a very, very, very short version, simplified version. It's a game of Monopoly. You go to play the game. Just before you sit down in your seat, a friend of yours says, "Will you play for me? I need to make the phone call. I need to pop out of the room. I need to do this, that, the other." You say, okay, you take their place. You play the game for them. You make a shed load of money. You make a lot of money. You've bought a lot of property for them. They come back in the room. They say, "Thanks very much." They take their seat. You take yours. You've made them, I don't know, £40,000. You take your, how much? Everybody starts with 500, right? You take your £500 and they say, "Let's go. Let's play. Let's roll the dice." So it's already, the game is already stacked against some people. So Evadne, how then does the person who's got the £500, how does the change start with them? Is that possible?
It was interesting to listen to Shola in terms of individual responsibilities. And I have to agree that for me, the change isn't about, the individual has to change. I understand that, but I don't think that's where the change starts, because the dice has already been, as you say, the cards are stacked against some individuals already. So I think the system as it currently stands, and it's a really difficult question because it is so complicated and so broad. There is no one thing that needs to change, but education for me is key. And I don't like the term Black history, because I don't think that's what it's about. I think it's about history being taught accurately, and not just from the perspective of the people that were the winners. And I think that's what happened. When we talk about history in the UK, for instance, if history was taught accurately, we wouldn't be talking about Black people as if they came here in 1948, because we've been here throughout Roman times, throughout all those things that we get taught. So if we saw history as being taught accurately and not in terms of the Black history and the British history, then that would be somewhere to start already. But I just think we're at a period in time when there is a generation, certainly, and I'm talking very much from a UK's perspective right now. There's a generation of young people who are in maybe 3rd generation born in this country, and now begin to feel that this is their country. They expect to be treated fairly. There's, and as you said, the cards at the moment are stacked against them. So the entire system needs to change. And when the system changes, the individuals who unconsciously, because it's the natural thing for them to have a sense of belonging, and not, I saw a sketch today that someone sent me with, it was an American, based in America, but it's a white American, met a Oriental American, and he says, "Where are you from?" And she says, "I'm from, say, Chicago." It wasn't Chicago. And he said, "No, but where are you from?" And she said, "Oh no, but I was born in," and she said, "another state." He said, "Okay, so where are your people from?" And she said, "Oh, my parents were from Korea." And he said, "Oh, that's it, you're Korean." So she said, "Well, where are you from?" He said, "I'm American." She said, "No, but where are you from?" And he went on. Then she said, and he finally says, "Well, my grandparents were British." So she immediately then threw it back at him. I think it's this sense of us being the other. And I don't think there are any of us, whether you're born in this country, I wasn't born in this country, but I grew up and was educated in this country. And yet, even my children who were born in this country are seen as the other. And we have to get to a place where we're British. And so I don't think there's a easy answer to how we make change. I think it's very complicated. Lots and lots of things need to be changed, but I think the system has to change.
Andy, thinking about where you're from, going back to that, that I don't know, cartoon, sketch, thinking about that and seeing people as the other. I mean, you bring a unique perspective to this conversation, which I think is really, really valuable to hear. Where do you think change needs to start?
I think people change their views when they connect with people on a one-to-one level. And I don't think the political speeches kind of make so much of a difference. I'm not sure that kind of riots make that much of a difference. They maybe vent anger and things like that, but people, I think, when they engage with each other. So from my perspective, the people that I might know are fairly closed in their kind of connections. They don't come from big cities where the kind of great cosmopolitan kind of centres are, and so therefore they come from a fairly closed world. And if you can break that down, and you break that down by just having friends and connections and integrating events, so you understand other people's perspectives and points of view, then I think that personally makes a bigger change in someone's mind. It's about okay, we talk about education, but it's education on a number of levels. Of course, there's the higher level education, but people are changed by actually having a friend that's not the same as them, and that friend can, in a nice way, pick them up on all the kind of prejudices and the kind of assumptions that their kind of little world has kind of given them as an individual.
Yes. Yeah, again, education has been mentioned by the other three panelists. You currently, okay, fine, you're in postdoc research, but certainly the field that you're in is in education, as it were, and you teach as at the current, you teach. So, what's your perspective on this? And you've certainly heard the comments from the other three panelists in terms of the start point for change. What sort of things do we need to be looking at? I think
I agree with, actually I find myself agreeing with the other three panelists. I think everybody is, each of them is saying a part of the issue. I think like Ivadni said, it's a complicated issue, but I do think that Shola's point about it beginning with the individual, yes, the deck is stacked against certain people, but I would argue that it still starts with them. It's unfair, but that's just the way it is. That the system, and it is a system, but a system is people, right? Systems are not brick and mortar. Systems are made up of people. And unfortunately, or just the way it is, the people who desire the change are the same people who have to fight the battle to change the system, because the system benefits a certain group of people and they have no incentive, no reason to change it because it suits them.
So is change possible?
I believe change is possible. And this is, my feeling is change is possible, but it's going to take hard work. And it's unfortunately going to be the hard work of the people who have the least power. but that is the fallen world we are in. So if you think about the civil rights movement, you think about people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, people who died trying to bring change.
Yes, yes.
They were the minority, they were the powerless. But because they took a stand, we're not there yet, but certainly I would like to think that America and Europe have moved on a little bit. Martin Luther King did not die in vain. We still talk about him now.
Yes.
So what he stood for, it was powerful, but he took a stand. It wasn't, to put this bluntly, white people cannot win equality for black people. Black people have to take the stand and then look for allies, or now allyship is a big word being thrown around on social media. I always say, currently I won't go into details, but there's a bit of online. There's been a bit of an argument about a webinar that was being held that was going to talk about issues of race and diversity, and the webinar itself was mostly white people, and there was no black person on there. There was one Indian person, and it has caused quite a bit of uproar. Now, what I say, my response is, I get, people were trying to do the right thing. They wanted to highlight issues of diversity, but you cannot do it for the minority. You have to find ways to empower the minority without being the savior. You cannot, equality will be achieved. I believe equality will be achieved because I believe God seeks that and God will bring that about. But it's going to be off of the back and the sweat of the people, the powerless. It is not the people in power. The people in power can get out of the way. The people in power can make things a little bit easier. But if the powerless do not rise up and fight for that, it will never happen. And so I feel that is where the personal responsibility comes. I am slightly, growing up in Ghana, living in America for 12 years, seeing maybe the best times in America in terms of when someone like Barack Obama became president, and people thinking, yay, we've solved it. White people, black people crying and hugging each other in the street, celebrating. And then 8 years later, you have a complete different president. And it shows you that, okay, maybe we didn't go as far as we did. But I now live in Africa. And I think I look at Africa and I feel, even in Africa, there is a certain differential treatment we give to let's put it bluntly, to white people based on their colonial heritage.
Now, you see, I'm glad you went there, because as you were speaking, it's one of the things that I was saying, because you were talking about how this change will, in some regards, be precipitated by the actions of the underprivileged, the suffering. But when the suffering, and I'm going to pose this question to Shola, when the suffering venerate, those in power, what hope is there for change?
I think that it is true where it's a case of where we're not, black people we don't look at ourselves, I would say we as a people rather than say they, where we don't look at ourselves as worthy of honor in a certain way, because we feel that when you are taught and you're spoken to in a manner for a long time, it becomes part of your psyche and part of who you are. You identify as I am less than, I'm less than. I think, but that's why it's so much by self. It has to come from yourself. There has to be a sense of self-worth that I am a human being. I do have what it takes to do this, and I am able to stand up and do this thing. There has to be a confidence that I say all the time, like, my confidence comes from, I know who I am in Christ. That's where I always go from. So I know God has created me a certain way to do certain things. So I do not sit back and kind of go, actually, hold on, wait. That person is meant to be higher than me. No, I'm gifted to do certain things, so I will do those things. And I think it does come from self. That's why I talk about education. Yes. Educating ourselves to know that we are worth the positions that we're trying to aim